I'd like to call the January 7th, 2019 meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education to order. First up on the agenda, we need to modify tonight's agenda to add a donation under the action items, which you all have in front of you. It's a little bit different from what was posted. Could I have a motion? Diana?
So moved.
Jen,
At the
second?
All Sports Booster.
All those in favor?
But it's already there.
It's approved.
Oh, it's different.
To approve the agenda. Yeah, I'll do that next. Okay, sorry. Yeah. First up on the list is to approve the minutes from December 17th. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes? Tom? Second. Hazel? All those in favor? Abstentions? Thanks. Next is to review and approve the modified agenda for tonight. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as modified? Sherry? Hazel? All those in favor? Thanks. Next is comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Is there anyone who would like to be heard? Yes, you just state your name.
Hi, I'm Jane Himmel. I live on Brayburn Drive. About a dozen years ago, I was a very frequent visitor to the Board of Ed meetings. I no longer have kids in the school systems. I was here on behalf of the League of Women Voters to advocate, present our research, and advocate for changing school start times. When we did our study back then, we presented it as a public health crisis. And since then, the data and the public information and associations and doctors and school districts have simply added to the data and magnified the need. The need has not gone away. I think it's time to recognize that a couple decades ago, someone made a mistake having students started at a particular time. We didn't have the information back then about the health impact of sleep and sleep cycles on our students. When we look at other public health issues, things have changed. We no longer, when I went to high school, we got to smoke in the courtyard. I didn't wear seatbelts. If we had lead paint, we no longer have that. If you get asbestos, you have to spend the money to remediate it. We know that the logistics are difficult, and that's why probably it hasn't been done. And I do appreciate your taking it on again. And I want to congratulate you at this point of really going farther beyond than the board ever really did over a decade ago. But I think from all the parents and what I'm seeing is that it's just simply not enough. Other towns have moved forward a lot more quickly. They've established more broad range, more inclusive and broader committees. They've given timetables, and they've really felt let the community know that there's a real sense of urgency about this. So I really encourage you to assure the community that the health and well-being of children is really first and foremost on your minds. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Yep.
Hi, I'm Melanie Keene. I'm a parent of a self-school student, and I'll have several other self-school students coming through the system. Why I'm here tonight, and I wrote a letter back in December, is I really appreciate all the work that the school board has done, the district has done, to carefully consider the issue. But what I really want to reiterate is how important it is to look at the impact to all students, elementary school students, middle school students, and high school students. And I really want to make sure that where there isn't a lot of data, we're not jumping to conclusions about how elementary school students, some as early as 4 and 5 and 6 year olds, may be impacted by an earlier start time. I did see in the media that some of the start times being proposed were as early as 7:30 or 7:45 in the morning. And without a lot of data, it's really hard to say whether positively, neutral, or negatively these students could be impacted. So I just want to make sure that the needs and concerns of the South School students will be continued to be in your mind, and I really appreciate the time that you're taking to consider all, not just the high school students in our system. Thanks.
Thanks. Anyone else? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Barbara Rucci. I just wanted to follow up on the letter that my husband and I sent last week. We had wanted to put some of those questions on the record. I know you can't respond in this forum, but I wanted to make sure you hear them. In the last meeting, Dr. Lutzy, you mentioned a June date for bringing information to the board. Could you move this up to April or May? Moving the date up would allow enough time for the board to digest the information and become as informed as possible before making a decision. We also worry that June is too close to the summer, and that's exactly what happened last year. You ran out of time to add it to next year's budget. Could you create a project plan for the work that still needs to be done and put it on your website? I think that kind of transparency would be helpful to parents and would also keep the administration on track. Could you earmark the expected cost for later start to the 2019 budget, or some of it? This could help mitigate the costs for 2020. Could you implement other health and wellness changes for high school students in 2019? The number one healthiest change would be letting them sleep more, but since they have to wait another year for that, could you make immediate changes such as limiting AP classes, changing homework due times from midnight to 9 p.m. so students aren't doing their homework at 11:59, and creating a block schedule which most students agree is less stressful and might lend itself better to shortening periods for a shorter school day in anticipation of a later start? And lastly, could you put together a speaker event to educate the public and also to educate teachers? Teachers are talking with their students about a later start. We've heard this anecdotally from several parents. It would be great if both teachers and the public could learn the science behind sleep so that they could be better informed when having conversations at home or in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Others?
Jared Remington. I live at Soundview Lane, 3 kids in the public school system. I'll just briefly say I strongly support this measure, your consideration to move the start time back. We have several friends in different areas who have noticed after they changed a big difference in mood, in energy level, in depression, et cetera, with their children. Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks. Anyone else like to speak?
Hi, I'm Suzanne Messina. I have a 6th grader at Saks. And thank you all for your service. I really appreciate it. And the time you spent on starting school later, because it's a very valuable program. I'd like to see it implemented. I just feel strongly that the longer we delay the implementation of this later start time program and support the investment in our students, the more we're putting their well-being at risk. With all the research and data that's before us, I feel like it's almost irresponsible and a little bit reckless not to implement this sooner. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Janie Conadaris. I too would like to thank you all very much for your service to the community. You spend a lot of time studying these things, and we appreciate it deeply. Where we are versus where the district said we would be. At the June 4th Board of Ed meeting last year, we came away feeling very optimistic. Nearly all aspects of Dr. Lutzy's presentation of A, the research into other districts, and B, the survey conducted in New Canaan, pointed in one direction, that later start times produced very good outcomes, and that there was a clear desire for change right here in New Canaan. In addition, as a board, you indicated support of 2 very specific next steps. 1, forming a committee to focus on this issue, and 2, developing implementation options to be reviewed in time to make a decision prior to the 2019 budgeting. It was also mentioned that a traffic study could be conducted in the same time frame. But what happened instead? As you know, there's still no committee. The next time that you or the public heard anything more about start times was at the November 19th meeting, when 4 inadequate bus options were discussed. But even if a perfect bus option had been presented, the traffic study had not begun, and November 19th was already too late to make a decision for budgeting. So why did this happen? We know the science. We know very early start times harm our children. We've written letters. emails, spoken up at meetings, quoted your own district goals back to you. And to date, we've heard no explanation for the delay. So what do you say will happen next? Will you say that you will continue working on it with the goal to have something in June, but no specific project plan in place? What do we fear will actually happen now? More delays. June will come, and as a board, you will have seen very little in the interim. So maybe we will all see another set of bus options, maybe a traffic study, maybe some discussion on the formation of a committee,
10
or maybe
seconds.
gather more information. But since it will be June, we fear that everything will likely stop again and then convene in September, and with the goal to make a decision in time for 2020 budgeting. We're going to run out of time again.
Sorry, it's
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Okay, thank you. Next on the list is reports and recognition with the board and administration. We have the school start times update.
Sure. Excuse me. Sure. So, Happy New Year, everyone, to begin. Nice to have folks here to attend the board meeting as well. Thank you for coming tonight. The traffic study was conducted just prior to the break. And just recently, I received a draft report of that I have yet to go through and to talk with Lou from TAS, who conducted the study. Some takeaways from the traffic study include the need to manage the traffic flow at the end of the day over here at the high school as the buses pull out, and over at Saks as well. So part of what happens is, and I think we heard Mark Walsh talk about that a little bit, the buses back up at the high school as they're trying to leave the lot. And so what should, with some help and somebody working to manage the flow of traffic, should take 2 minutes, winds up taking 10 or 12 minutes for those high school buses to pull out. He had also, another recommendation around that traffic flow was to speak with the gentleman who's working the traffic lights to let him know that at certain times of the day, he may have to leave the red lights on probably on the South Ave side for a minute or so, a minute and a half, as the buses roll through in order to get them moving, in order to get them out delivering students or going to pick students up at the end of the day. So those changes in traffic will make a significant difference in the timing of the buses and how they flow. He also talked a bit about the idea of a road that I know the first selectman has mentioned that would perhaps connect from the high school up into Waveney. And he thought that could be helpful, not as a primary means of transportation, but as a sort of an overflow if necessary. So Kevin's here, and I will be talking with the first selectman about this idea once the traffic study is completed. But one of the things we asked him to do, and he looked very closely at this, and this is an idea that comes from our traffic coordinator, right, Mr. Walder, and we've been looking at and thinking about. We asked him to really take a good hard look at Saks Middle School and see what it would take to have Saks on one dismissal. As we mentioned last time, as Dr. Krenti and I went around to each of the buildings and talked with staff about sort of pros and cons, the question about the elementary school did come up, and the timing for elementary students, and I'll get to that in a moment. But we also heard some other things from staff that caused us to sort of think a little bit about what, if we were going to bring a proposal forward, what might be in that. The idea of Saks at one tier was a strong sort of feeling from the staff and from parents and from others. The idea of trying to have the elementary school start at the same time, so have all three elementaries in the same tier, was another possibility. So a scenario that Mr. Walder brought forward that we've been looking at and that I think has some promise is an idea that has the three elementary schools actually in the first tier, the high school alone in the second tier, and then Saks in the third tier. The reason why it could possibly work that way is the challenge at Saks, as we know, is the facility and the parking and the dismissal. That literally the facility itself isn't large enough to have one dismissal of students. You just can't get all the buses there. Well, if you staggered it the way that I just mentioned with the elementaries in the morning, high school, and then the middle school, what you could look to do, and again, this is very preliminary, but possible, we think, is you would have your buses bring the elementary students home, and then some of them would come to the high school. The majority would come to the high school to bring the high school students home, but you would have some additional buses. Those buses would go over to Saks and stage, essentially. Then the first buses that complete the runs from the high school would then go over to Saks, and you would have a first wave of bus dismissal. Then those students would be dismissed, go to the buses and leave, and then the other buses would move in as a second wave of dismissal. So essentially, students would be in either the first wave of dismissal or the second wave. Those students in the first wave of dismissal, we'd look to make those the students that have the furthest ride out after school. So those that live the furthest from Saks. The second wave would be those that are closest to Saks, so that students would generally be getting home at around the same time. Because you don't have another school or another tier waiting for those Saks buses to come back around, it's possible to do this in 2 waves. There are challenges to it, and we're looking at pickup times in the morning, because we are very aware of not wanting to do anything that would disadvantage any of our students. We've asked Hanover, and they've been doing some meta-analysis for us about the impact of start times on elementary age students, as we talked about last board meeting. Preliminarily, they've echoed what our findings have been, which is it's very sparse. There's not much out there. But we also agree that the lack of research doesn't mean carte blanche. So we're really looking to see what else we can find and try to, if we can't get some hard data, at least have some anecdotal conversations with some districts that have made some changes. The high school in the middle tier is advantageous because of the way that we use the buses, but it also would mean that we could develop a scenario, if this could come together, where students would not have to be dismissed early from class in order to participate in athletic events, away contests. Because that's another thing that we've talked about and that I've said, that would be difficult to recommend a schedule that automatically means that students would be missing classes, because that is our core mission, that's our work, it's what we got in education to do first and foremost. So it looks, having the high school in the middle tier looks like that could work. It also addresses the concerns around the middle school age child by putting them in the third tier. And by doing that, it really would result in a shifting of the clubs and activities to before school instead of after school. And then it also serves to do an important thing, which is it compresses the time for the middle school children between the end of the school day and dinner time. And as educators, and research actually shows that time between the end of the middle school day and dinner time at home is a time where middle school students have opportunities sometimes to make bad decisions. So the more you can sort of compress that time and have meaningful activities for students to be involved in, and in this way it would be being in school, the better. And so I think it helps to serve towards that too. Now again, there are some constraints and challenges that we're looking at. These include the start time, how early could and should the first pickup be if we were going to make this kind of a move for our elementary kids. We are looking at some additional buses to do this because of we wouldn't want students who are currently walking to South walking in the dark to South. So we'd have to have some extra buses to be able to pick them up and bring them in. There's also quite a bit of coordination that would have to occur. Right now, we've got a sizable group of students who go after school from the elementaries in the middle over to the Y. We would need to work with them, coordinate with them, and really with all service providers that work with our students after school. We're really talking about, for East and West, instead of dismissing at 3:35, you're looking at an hour and a half earlier. That's a significant chunk of time. So the community and the service providers and others would need to know and we'd need to work with them and talk with them in order to coordinate something along those lines. I'm not here to say this is the scenario that I'm recommending yet, because there's more work to be done. But I want to share with you because work is being done and continues to be done. The magnitude of the change, it moves everybody, right? There's nobody who's in the same place as far as the schools and the kids and the families go. So it's about as significant of a change as far as the start times go as you can get. Cost-wise, again, there's probably a couple of buses that would be required to be able to meet the needs of the walkers in the morning. What happens is the school start time and end time is really driven by the longest run at each location. So as Mark talked about, if you bring in additional buses and split those longest runs, you can kind of save some time that way. So for instance, if we had students who had to be picked up well before 7 there's a possibility of adding a bus that could then move that instead of well before 7. It may still be before 7, but maybe not quite as much. Though we've got to work through those details, look at the riderships, look at, do some more analysis of this. But I think that it has some promise, and so I put it out there just as sort of Mark had given us 4 options. I put this out there as sort of a 5th option. I don't have it written up or whatever because we're still bouncing it around, stress testing it in different ways. But it does have some promise. But now it's our job to kind of punch holes in it, right, and see where it couldn't work or what the issues would be. There are trade-offs and decisions that have to be made. For instance, when the 5th grade moved over to Saks, there was conversation about the 5th grade and the 8th grade not being on the bus together. This scenario has them on the bus together. They'd have to be. So that's could be a trade-off. Could be consider that. There. Again, other pieces about the 3 elementary schools and how do they start at 7:30, 7:35, 7:40, and that informs when the next tier and the next tier run. So you're going to try to figure out what's the best balance with that. But it's something that we're looking at and talking about. And so tomorrow morning, I'll be talking with the PTCs, the elementary PTCs over at East, about the budget. And as you'll see tonight, it's a very solid budget, very I think, thoughtful and conservative budget, and I think that conversation will be relatively short. And they give me a lot of time, so I figured I would talk about the school start times with the balance of the time tomorrow morning. So I'll have some parents there, and I'll share this idea and the others and get some feedback from them at that point. And then next week, a meeting here in the Wagner Room with the PTC of Saks and the high school PFA. And we'll do the same thing. We'll talk about budget, and I'll answer some questions and do that, but also be able to roll into a discussion around school start times and scenarios and considerations and what have you. This, again, is very preliminary. We haven't gone around to the buildings, talked to staff, had those conversations. First, it's a feasibility study, but I thought I'd share it with the board tonight and see if you have any thoughts or feedback or questions or whatever, and then we'll go to the parents in the next 2 weeks and report back and let you know that feedback, and also should have the traffic study ready to share at that point as well.
Great, thank you. I think it's great to have this as a potential scenario that we could evaluate over the coming months, and make sure that we've ticked down all the potential issues and talked to various constituencies and make sure that we, if we do make a change, particularly one that impacts every single student in the district, it's the right one. Any questions or comments? Jen?
So if this was something that we look at seriously, would this be for next calendar year?
I think given the magnitude of the change, I don't believe so. I don't think that would be a wise move.
Would you ever start at like second term, or would this be like?
We'd have to reroute just about every student because of the timing. And we really have to look carefully at Saks and moving those buses. I wouldn't say never, but I also never want to overpromise and underdeliver. So I think it's something that playing it forward, if the district and the board did commit to doing this, it's going to take quite a bit of coordination.
Right.
So reasonably, I think you could say the 2020 school year. If we wanted to be aggressive and try to do something mid-year or what have you, then we can try.
Right.
Yeah. But I just echo what Mark's advice was, which is
Right.
a good idea, poorly implemented is a bad idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just another thing. So, I know someone here mentioned, about like the younger kids, and like, do we have any? I mean, we've heard so much from this group, which is great. But I'm just wondering, like, have we heard? I mean, I haven't gotten a lot of feedback from people that have younger kids. I haven't really seen a lot of. I know that just from experience, little kids seem to wake up earlier, of course. But like, are we thinking about maybe doing like a district-wide survey for parents as to like their thoughts? I mean, of those kindergarten parents or Saks parents, or, I mean, I don't know.
One of the things, the takeaways from our meetings with the teachers was that the younger students really do get tired in the afternoon. So East and West, and those students being in school till 3:35, that, as the day went on, their stamina seemed to wane. In the the formal research itself, there's really not much about school start times and younger than adolescent students. It really starts in 8th grade is the majority of the research that we've found and that I've been exposed to. So we're looking to try to get more. There's never any harm in asking folks, and getting that feedback. And that's one of the questions I'm going to ask tomorrow.
Right.
When I'm at over at East at
Yeah, yeah.
9:30 for that budget PTC meeting, just to get people's feedback around it. I think that if we stress test this and it holds up and it looks like it's something that could occur, then I think we would want to get people's feedback on it from a variety of different perspectives, elementary, middle, high school, and even, I remember changing the schedule once years ago in another district, and some of the local businesses were quite upset because it changed the flow of students into the business, it changed their revenue, changed their profit, and, they were upset, not that we did it, we explained why it was a good thing to do, but that they didn't know. So we'd want to make sure that everybody was included once, a scenario, I won't say is locked in, but at least is preferred.
Okay. And so I think this seems really great. And the website is great, like super informative, so I'm psyched about that. And again, I know we've got this June kind of distant date, but it'd be great to kind of, again, we have so many pieces to put together, and it'd be great to kind of have an idea of what is to come, just all the pieces that we need in order to make this informed decision. So, just for me to know, just a little bit more of not a timeline per se, but even just like a punch list on things that we need to cover in our meetings that are going to be able to make us be able to make a good decision.
Yeah, I think that
Would be great.
the thinking around June is so that the board at that point does have enough information sort of accumulated in order to make an informed decision around this way, that way, or neither at this time. Certainly we're not going to hold anything back and wait until June and present it, because I agree that would put everybody at a disadvantage. I'd put the board, the administration, everybody in a spot where it could make it difficult again to plan forward.
Right.
So,
And especially, I would say if we know, if we can see, and if someone like Penny is oh, I need this before I can make that decision, then we have to go back to the drawing board. It'd be great to kind of see and make sure that everyone's got, gets
I
the
think
information that they need. And
working on a timeline between now and June of the things that we need to evaluate and, when we expect them to be evaluated and presented to the board, I think would be, helpful for everybody. If we could do that. We'll probably have to work on that together and figure out, what sort of timeline makes sense and what all the issues are, and, but maybe put something like that together, I think would be good. Does that make sense? Sherry?
So yeah, I want to thank you for this update, and also thank you for your very purposeful and thoughtful leadership on this. It's very complicated, but I absolutely agree. I think in order for us as a board to demonstrate our urgency, I do think that we need a timeline. There's 6 months between now and June, so we should be able to communicate to the public exactly what's going to happen between now and June to get us to the point where we can make this informed decision. I also think it's a great suggestion for us to start to expand the discussion now on wider wellness and healthy, really what we need to do to bring healthy living to the students in our district. And I think you've, from the very beginning, emphasized that there is an ecosystem here. And, the start time is part of that ecosystem, but there's many other factors that are impacting our students' mental health. And so I don't think we should wait on that discussion either. Obviously, there's a lot going on, but there may be little things that we can implement in the 1920 school year with the school start times to be implemented in 2021. But I really think that, again, in order for us to demonstrate that we all feel the urgency behind this, we have to be doing a couple more things here. And also, I think we have promised the parents that they would have more opportunities for bilateral engagement. I think it's one thing for them to be able to come here and give public comment, but I think back in December, we actually said we'd have a meeting in December where there would be two-way communication, and I think we should follow up on that as well and provide that forum.
Sure. Well, again, I'm glad to. I did, my apologies on December. Did we just run out of time, flat out?
And it's budget season.
Yeah, we've been you'll see. You'll see. But that's okay. That's why I did want to mention tonight the PTC meeting tomorrow, the PTC PFA meeting next week, and if we want to set up something in addition to that, glad to do it.
And so that'll be communicated out broadly, that
I believe it has been.
I got the email.
no, but
about tomorrow.
But that it's beyond a budget meeting.
Yeah, I believe it has been.
Yeah.
I think so. And I'm looking at the principals of the elementary
It
schools,
has,
right?
yeah, it had start times in the subject.
Good.
That's great.
We'll
Thank
keep
you.
at it.
Thank you.
Maria?
I would add on to that as well, and even build time into the PTC meetings and PFA meetings for the feedback. It is interesting, I was reading the book, and the physiological changes that happen that you don't know about are kind of scary. So I really think, it's our job to protect the students who are, especially the high school students that are really stressed, taking more than one AP. It's our job to make sure we build a system, an infrastructure that allows them to be healthy in all areas. So, and if the meetings can be spelled out in advance regularly and get the feedback, that would be helpful. And I just was a little confused about the proposed idea to move things around. Does that mean elementary would go at the time high school goes now? Or what is the later start?
Sure. The thinking, again, it's a scenario.
Right.
Right? Would be that the 3 elementary schools would all go on the first tier. Now, if that's, is at 7:30 or 7:35 or 7:40, I don't want to zero in on that yet because there's more work to do. But they would be the first tier of buses, and then the high school alone would be the second tier, and then the middle school itself, 5 through 8, would be the third tier.
Thanks.
Sure.
Other questions? All right. Thank you.
Great. My pleasure.
Next up is action items. First on the list is the superintendent's 2019-2020 budget for a first read.
I'll take the long way. Brain lock, and, no, I'll pull it out and put it back in. We tested it today. Should I escape? Okay, ready? Oh, no. Why'd you pull it out? Why don't we restart? Give it a second. All right, got it. There we go. Restart.
See?
I do. Okay. Could it be,
Oh, there.
oh, I just restarted.
Just-
Okay. Now
Okay.
you just have to stay here like this the whole time.
Yes, exactly.
What Teo and I say is.
All right, go on. Take that down.
Do you think it should be
Well,
out, or should it start with it in? What do you think? Let's just give it one more shot. Try to- Are they both on the matrix, or is just this one? Yeah. Sorry, folks.
It's, it was on back on there.
Just for funny, it just restarted the matrix. Worked this morning. Okay, here we go. Hey, sorry. Sorry about that.
I think it was one night when he was making that.
Now, a moment of truth is when did
Yeah,
Violet go?
I did. I was like,
As soon as we get an image, it should be okay.
we don't get that in our presentation.
All right.
There we go.
Well done. All right. You knew sooner or later that was going to be out there. I would tell the story, but it'd take too long. Good evening and thank you. I apologize for the delay. It's my great pleasure to present to you tonight the superintendent's 2019-2020 budget. As I begin, first let me start by saying thank you. Thank you for moving the meeting up to 6:15 tonight. As you know, it's a big night for us Tiger alum as Clemson plays the national championship. So thank you for adjusting the time, and hopefully we can all get home a little bit earlier than normal tonight. But more importantly, as I go into the budget, and sharing the budget with you, I want to say thank you to the Board of Education for all of your really good work, both during budget season and 12 months throughout the course of the year. You know, I think it's easy for people to forget that each of you is a member of an elected volunteer board. The work that we do as a district, the time that you put into our district initiatives, the focus that you bring, the expertise that you share really helps to make us so much better in our work each and every day. And I speak, I think, for all of us across the district when I say thank you for all of what you do to help the New Canaan Public Schools be what they are on behalf of the children in our care. As superintendent, I'm still humbled and inspired by each of you in the work that you do. And so as I stand here before you tonight, this is sort of the big reveal of the budget. But as you know, we'll be going through many, having conversations with different town bodies, different presentations, different meetings. And in all of those meetings and presentations and discussions, I'm always proud to represent the Board of Education and each of you because of the way that you approach your work on the board, it's with such a dignity and professionalism. So thank you for that. I also want to take a moment to thank all of the district folks, the administrators, the others who have contributed to this budget this year. First, I want to start, of course, with Dr. Joanne Keating and Tracy Haberman, both who have worked tirelessly to put together what I believe to be the best representation of a school district budget that you're ever going to find. I think the attention to detail, the thoughtful approach to not just getting the numbers on a page, but to creating a document that truly educates and informs people about the complexity of a school district budget and how we use it as a strategic lever for our priorities and the work that we do. I encourage you, and tonight I'll be just talking about some highlights about the budget and what have you, and then we can go into the budget document itself, either tonight or in other opportunities that we'll talk about at the end. But I do encourage everyone to read the narratives that are in the document as well. It's so easy, and I'm guilty of it, I'm sure most people are, to just go to the numbers, go to the spreadsheet, just look at the charts and sort of try to derive your own meaning from that. But the narratives at the start of each section really do represent what those numbers mean. They're written by the cost center managers, they're written by the administrators, they're written by Joanne, Tracy, me, all of us. We worked really hard to put those together so that you can read the narrative and build that context and the understanding, and then the numbers make sense. I'm sure you've done what our students do in the classroom whenever they get a paperback. They go right to the grade on the last page. You've probably already gone to the last page and seen what the overall increase is. Great, we know that. Now put it aside, go back to the first page, and work your way through it. And I do believe you'll come away with a whole new sort of understanding of and appreciation for both the complexity of a school district budget, but also the power that lies therein. Joanne and Tracy do an outstanding job putting that together. I also, of course, want to thank Jill, Darlene, Gary for all of your efforts in doing this. We've held hours, days of meetings with all of our administrators, and throughout it all, it's, again, the wisdom and experience all coming together to put the budget document together and put a proposal before you that we feel continues to sustain the excellence throughout the system, looks for strategic ways to improve results, and does it all with very, very close, careful stewardship of all of the resources as efficiently as possible. So in doing this work, of course, I also want to thank our building administrators, our cost center managers. Here we have all 5 of our principals are here. Bill Egan from the high school, Dave Gussich, the middle school, Jan, Chris, Joanne for our 3 elementary schools, Jay Egan, our athletic director, is here. Vivian Birdsall, Rana are both here from the NCEA. Thank you for coming. Alan, Lizette are here as well. So, I mean, it's a team effort. You hear me talk about it. They're all here. We're all here. Oh, Ian and Brandon are here. Matt's here. Dan. They're all here tonight to support me. But also, if there are questions, what have you. But they also they've been a part of this from the beginning. You know, the budget itself, we don't sit in a room and just work with a calculator and come up with these numbers and move them forward. Nothing here is just last year's number or this year's number plus an escalator. Everything is really carefully thought through and planned and designed. People talk about, you know, zero-based budgeting. You know, that's what we do in each of our line items every time. Because we start with, you know, what do we have, what do we need, what can we eliminate, where are we, how do we move forward? And you'll see as we go through these, through some of the specifics, that we don't just sort of add money to add it because we think something's going to happen. We really take a very planful and purposeful approach in building our budget and putting these things together. And it takes a lot of work from a lot of people. And I think we're very fortunate here in New Canaan to have some of the best people around to do this work together. So I mentioned the meetings that we'll be having. I just include this slide not to really talk to it so much, just so that you have that in the packet. But you'll see that tonight is the presentation. On the 22nd, so 2 weeks and a day from tonight, is the second meeting for the Board of Education. And at that point, we'd be looking for the Board of Education to finalize, discuss, review, adjust, what have you, and accept the budget as their own. And then it moves forward from there. 2 days later, I'll be meeting with the Board of Selectmen to talk about the budget itself, the operating, of course, but really the Board of Selectmen focuses on capital, and we'll go in depth around the capital requests that are here. And we'll talk about those briefly tonight as well. Excuse me. On the 5th of February, we have a meeting scheduled with the Board of Finance, and I believe the Town Council, where we'll be doing our presentation there as well. And then we'll kick off the conversation with the Board of Finance for that next month and the Town Council for the month after that. Ultimately, the process concludes beginning of April, where there is a public hearing on April 2nd. I'm glad it's not April 1st. And then the final budget vote on the 4th. So you see, it's several months of meeting, conversation, and work. But I see those as opportunities for us to talk about the really great things going on in our district, to talk about who we are, what our mission, vision, values, and goals, and to really give people even more reasons to kind of support and work with the Board of Education, you know, as we continue to do all of what we do on behalf of the children every day here. So, as you know, I'm going to move pretty quickly through these first slides because many of these charts and the information I'm going to share are things that you've seen in presentations before. But I can't really talk about a budget without really starting at the beginning, which is our district goals, where we've had 5 consistent district goals through the years. Those, as you know, each year under the goals are objectives and indicators that are discussed and adjusted and revised and then ultimately approved that then inform our work as we go through the year. But the 5 big sort of goalposts remain consistent, and they really are. It's around student performance and outcomes. It's around our communication, around our teachers' practice, focuses on school climate and safety, and then the last goal 5 is stewardship. Those 5 goals, and then the underlying objectives and indicators do really inform the work that we do, and it's reflexive in that when we sit to develop them, we think, okay, what is our next step, or what is the next project, a next direction for us in these realms? And then, as you know, the administrators discuss, bring to the board discusses over a couple of meetings, and then ultimately approves them forward. But I do think, again, when people ask me, what is sort of that secret to success for New Canaan? You know, what are some of the things you do that results in some of the outcomes that you get? This is always one of the things I talk about because of the consistency, right? There are plenty of other districts that work on 5-year strategic plans, and they create a 5-year plan. It goes on the shelf for 4.5 years, and then they get together and create another 5-year plan, and it's not a living document. We have a living document here that really is responsive to where we are, what we're doing, and where we're moving. And I think that truly does make a difference. And I credit you for that. As we sat together to put together the budget itself and to sort of worked through it, there are some sort of lenses that we brought to the work that I call core concepts in a way. One is that excellence is our expectation. We expect our teachers in the classroom, we expect our administrators, we expect every level of our organization, our custodians, our secretaries, everyone, to use excellence as their guide. We believe and know that schools exist for the children that come in every day, for the parents of those children and for the communities that they serve. And we're always working to be knowledgeable about and responsive to the expectations from each of our stakeholder groups. Every single one of our students deserves a world-class education. And again, this sustained commitment to excellence, it's empowered the district to deliver outstanding results for our children through the years. These are the slides I'm going to move, I'll move more quickly on. But I'll just say this, our athletic program highlights for the last year. Now, of course, we're only in the beginning of the winter season, so we just go back over 12 months and we take a look. But just outstanding. For just looking at the FCAC success alone, we, believe it or not, are one of, if not the smallest schools in the FCAC, and yet we continue to perform admirably across the board in all of our sports and athletics there. We've got some state championships here. We had an exciting fall season with the football team. You can see, one of the things I'm most proud of up here are those last two bullets as well. We've got two of our coaches who had some statewide recognition. Because just like we believe in the importance of the quality of our teaching staff, and we invest in the quality of our teaching staff through our professional development, our work, and we know that research says the number one indicator of student success is the quality of the teacher in the classroom. We also know that our coaches have significant influences on the lives of our kids. They spend a lot of time together. And as a result, Jay and his department works hard to continually develop those coaches as well. He does it through the evaluation model that he shared with the board about 1.5 years ago. He does it through his own supervision evaluation process, and also does it through feedback from students, from parents, and others. As a matter of fact, has even instituted a feedback instrument for kids at the end of seasons, things like that. So we're very proud of the success of our athletic program. We are equally proud of the success in our visual and performing arts program. Again, each one of these I could do a whole 20-minute presentation on, and I won't do that. I'll save that for the Board of Finance later. But the visual performing arts program itself, our students continue to perform at the very top in adjudicated music, in art, in theater. They not only do they do incredibly well across the board, but we've got a large percentage of students who are actually doing it. It's not just a very thin kind of level of students who are just going to be theater majors who spend all of their time doing this, who are doing the theater. We've got hundreds of kids involved, as you know. We're very proud of that. I didn't mention on the athletics that 70% of our students at the high school participate in one or more sport in their each year. 70%, 7 out of 10. And that is amazing. And that's something that the Board of Education has enabled us to do by the funding and by our working with the All Sports Booster Club and others. Same with visual and performing arts. We have 6 performances a year at the high school. I don't know other schools that do anywhere near that. And it's really about providing opportunities for all of our kids. Anyone who wants to be interested, there's always a place for someone. And we can continue to perform very, very well. We've also have an outstanding kind of library of student clubs and activities. This list could have gone on a little bit longer, but I thought that font was already embarrassingly small. But I put these out here because clubs at the high school, we believe strongly that we want every one of our students to be involved and engaged in a club or activity, sport, VPA, and something outside of the traditional school day. We want them to be connected to the school in another way. And so the process of starting a club at the high school is a couple of students get an idea, come together, they run it by Mr. Rothman or somebody else and ask them to be the advisor. If that person agrees to be the advisor and to supervise when they meet, they are able to get that club up and going. It's not that there are not stipends involved with this or other things. These are teachers volunteering their time to work with kids in order to do some things that are of high interest to the kids. And they might last for 6 months, it might last for 6 years. It depends. When I was principal here, we actually had a Quidditch club. They would meet in the cafeteria, and I would go down, and they would do their thing. I don't think they have a Quidditch club here anymore, so the interest wanes. But some kids wanted to do it. It was cool. I guess. So that's the club and activity. It's just an idea of providing a way for kids to get involved. We do have some, of course, that are more evolved, if we'll call it that, or more complex. And there are stipends for some. So, as you know, the Model UN program continues to be a powerhouse, really, in the region, in the state, and around. And that really, we treat that more of an academic sport, we call it, as you'll recall, than a club, because it really looks to develop skills in research, critical thinking, prepares the members for leadership in college and beyond. We've got 93 students here at the high school participating right now, and 30 kids over at Saks participating. Last year, there were 29 awards granted by these students and what they were doing. So far at the 2 conferences they've gone to this year, they've won 11 awards. So that's different, right? That's not just a couple of kids coming together, but what a wonderful opportunity for them. Another wonderful opportunity for a group of kids is the work that's going on over at Saks in the STEM club that Vivian actually works with, where they actually put together a presentation. If you'll recall, we had a group here, maybe it was 2 years ago, and they were talking about the work they had done around traffic, and a crosswalk, and they were working with Tiger to do that. This year, they submitted a proposal to the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow contest that was focused on, inspired by a visually impaired student over at Saks, and it's focused on developing a wearable technology solution that will allow the student to navigate Saks without help, without assistance. And they came up with the idea, they worked with Ms. Birdsall, they put the proposal together. So long story short, they just were named the state finalist here for Connecticut. Now they're going to compete nationally. As state finalists, believe it or not, they'll receive a $20,000 prize package, or a prize package valued at $20,000 of Samsung equipment, right? That can go back to the school and back to the program and do this work. But more importantly, the students are really solving a real world problem using technology based on their own experiences and classmates that they have over there at Saks. Amazing stuff in their own time. They're not doing this in the classroom. They're doing it after school. They're doing it during lunch. And they're engaged in real world engineering thinking and problem solving and what have you. So that's the richness that some of the clubs and activities provide for our students, and really awesome and impressive stuff. I think it's a February submission date for the national competition. Once they get past February and things slow down a little bit over there, if they ever do, we'll invite them to come to the board to talk specifically about that proposal and the work that they've done. But really important stuff. Our goal, again, is for every student to have an opportunity to get so engaged. Now, that's around our school climate and culture goal a little bit. But we also, of course, have to go to our student outcomes in our standardized assessments and our Smarter Balance and SAT assessments. Dr. Krenti, Mr. Egan, a few months back went through this with the board, so I won't repeat them. But suffice to say, when we look at the overall performance, our students in English language arts and in math scored at the top of the DIRG, top of the state, did very, very well. Here's the overall numbers. And we look at them a couple of different ways. The state really looks at them as the overall results, level 3 or 4. 3 is meet, 4 is exceeds goal. We also like to look at just level 4, because it also tells us a little bit more. It tells us about how are we taking those students who are already doing well and high performing and keeping them moving up. And as you see, we did 1, 2, 3, 4 across the board. We scored best in the DIRG there, as you know. Yeah, and you've seen these charts, just sort of repeating a little bit. But then we go one level deeper and we look at our ELA, English Language Arts, by grade. And what you see here is in grade 3 and grade 4, we were number 1 in the DIRG. Grade 5, we were 3rd, 6th, and 7th, number 2. And then grade 8, we're number 1 again. Incredibly strong performance across the board. And where Easton has a star there, it's because they had so few students that it wasn't statistically relevant to report. Same with math. Grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, we're number 1 in the DIRG, number 7, number 2, and then 8, number 1 again. And really, when you see numbers like this, you're talking about 90%, 92.6% students meeting or exceeding the achievement level of this assessment, which is meant to be a rigorous assessment for kids. And we've had presentations around that and solved some of the problems ourselves, actually. Really, it's impressive stuff when you see 9 out of 10 students meeting or exceeding those goals. And I guess part of what tells you that, at least as I look at it, is I look at where the comps are. So we look at the DERG scores, and we see scores in the 70s and the 80s, and we're up in the 90s there as we look across the board. So really great work by our curriculum team, great work by Dr. Crenti and everyone else there. The SAT test day, comparative results from the high school. Our high school students performed well for that's the one-day test that they take. And you'll see that we performed above the DERG average in both English and in math, and of course above the state average as well. And we're really in the top third of the DERG, around these scores. I'm always happy to slow down, but I'm just going to keep moving. Okay. The SAT, it's only one test, one day, a couple of hours, so it really doesn't tell the picture. So again, we go back to this, this data set that we've been using for the last 5 years to think about and consider how we're doing as high school. And I showed it to somebody today who was shadowing me from Sacred Heart. And as she looked, I asked her, just what does this tell you? What does it mean? And she said, well, what I see is that you're going up in just about every category. When I look at sort of trends, look at the average ACT scores, the number of AP scholars, the AP participation, the number of AP courses. And again, I know there's been some conversation a little bit about AP, but the high school has expanded its catalog of AP courses in the hope to provide a course for any student who's interested in taking one beyond the traditional sort of stable of AP courses. So we've added things like micro and macroeconomics, psychology, others that are, that broaden that catalog. So maybe a student isn't great in U.S. history, but he or she may want to try a college level class and may want to try instead that AP psychology instead of AP US. Maybe, again, they're better in business and math and they want to do an AP microeconomics instead of a traditional AP course in the history. So the idea of expanding those courses is to expand the access so that more students could take them. And we've seen positive results on that as well. The senior class that graduated last year was a small class. Nonetheless, the number of AP scholars going up is still, or has gone up again, year over year. So you see these results are very strong. And the third one down, accepted into the top 3 choices of colleges, the counselors felt that really wasn't a great data point. So they changed the question this year to the percentage of students who stated they were pleased with the admissions outcomes. And so that's the change in that number, and that's what that star means. Okay? But again, the high school continues to do quite well, as do all of our schools. So we know this internally. We know we're pretty good, even better than that. But what does it mean? What do other people think? In the past, I've had slides that were so dense, the font was 8 font and you couldn't see it. So I just picked a couple this year instead of doing that. But you'll see, again, best high school in every state. New Canaan High School is #1. U.S. News puts us in the top 2% of high schools in the country. Forbes, #2 district in the nation. School Digger, #1 school district in Connecticut. Best Colleges has us as one of America's best high schools. The niche.com accolades or ranking systems is one that we always perform quite well in, where #1 public school district, 1, 3, and 4 best elementaries. You see it up there. I think that the external recognition of our success is important. We do our work to help every one of our students, to help them to actualize all of the potential and everything that they bring with them every day. That work then results in these kinds of results. What's not up there is a wonderful recognition that that West Elementary School received this year by being named a Blue Ribbon School. So there was Blue Ribbon Elementary School here in Connecticut as well. When I spoke with the gentleman at the state who was sort of making this determination, he said, look, you've got 3 amazing elementary schools. And West this past year was amazing plus. It's the results were outstanding, and West deserves an awful lot. And when I talked with the West faculty a bit about it, they credited the collaboration and the professional learning community that they have over there. And so, it's another external recognition of the great work that goes on here in the school. Now, you would think with all of the success that our spending would correlate with our rankings, but this is a place where you don't want to be #1. And I think that we do quite a good job of managing our spending, and we can look at some comps here in the DERG in order, again, to build some context. So ANGLEC is essentially the wealth ranking that the state uses. It just adjusted net grand list. Okay? NCEP is net current expenditures per pupil, and the base of that's pulled off of is pretty much generated from the EDO1 reporting, the state reporting that's done, in order to, you'll never get apples to apples. They're never exact when you do these comparisons, but that's as close as you're really going to get. And this is, again, these all come from the state, which is why they are a little bit older than I would have liked, but the state doesn't have newer numbers up there. So the NCEP rank in the state for New Canaan, it's the 27th. So the Anglic places us as the second highest wealth ranking in the state, which you would consider the ability to pay. The NCEP puts us at 27th, which I think, if nothing else, certainly shows some careful stewardship. So I wanted to go just the next slide, breaks that out a little bit more, just to show what we're talking about. We have the DERGs, and so all the DERG A schools are included here. But again, I think it provides more context for you. Again, ANGLEC is your wealth ranking. The state develops that, uses that for things like reimbursement rates on construction projects, other things. And again, the net current expenditures per pupil. So we are, again, 27th in the state, $5 per student more than Darien. We'll work on that. Okay. So we're going to get into the actual numbers now. But before we do, just very briefly, some themes that you'll see echoed throughout the document itself and the numbers in the budget. You'll see again, and this is first and foremost, the budget is responsive to shifts in enrollment, demographics, and student needs. The student enrollment drives our salary, which drives our budget. And I'll talk about that in a minute or two. You'll also see and hear a little bit about some work we've done to insource some important functions, which has both increased and improved our outcomes and reduced our costs. So we've been strategic about it. We've really thought hard about, if we were to insource this, what would the long-term outcome be? But you'll see we've done it in printing, we've done it in maintenance, we've done it in special education, and it's really, again, improved our outcomes and reduced our costs. Of course, the budget has to be supportive of high-quality instructional and assessment practices. That's the core of what we do. So we have to maintain that excellence there. The stewardship of district facilities and resources. We'll talk about capital in a few minutes. You'll see that there's a significant investment on the table for South School for next year and some other investments at all of our schools. We believe they're all very important for us to maintain this responsible stewardship, continue to focus on safety and security, and incorporating technology into our work. So we're going to begin by talking about the non-benefits accounts. And we do that because it really, in conversation with the Board of Finance, I know most of the Board of Education was there on the Saturday that we spent with the Board of Finance, Town Council, Board of Selectmen, and others, talking about the budget, and there was a model that was put up for us as well. They really were asking to see the budget a little bit differently than we'd been presenting in the past by breaking out the benefit number and sort of talking about it separately that way. So I thought that tonight I'd share this with you this way. We'll get to the aggregate in a moment, but to begin to talk about the non-benefits account. So as we have in the past, we've taken this current budget, the 2019 budget, and spent quite a bit of time and energy working to develop a projected budget. And that projected budget comes from our experience and expertise and knowledge and what have you, to take those budget numbers and turn them into where we think they're going to be at the end of the year. The last couple of years, Dr. Keating's been very, very close on these projections. So I believe that they are a good base from which to compare as we think about the budget request for next year. We'll go into each of these objects in a moment. As you know, Board of Education budgets, we have operating budget and a capital budget, and then the budget itself is broken up into the 8 objects. Here's 7 of them. And then we add fees and then the total budget line at the bottom. But the short story here, and then we'll get into the details, is these non-benefit accounts with this budget that you have in front of you would be increasing 1.9%. So that's everything except employee benefits. And again, I'll get into the drivers in a moment, but important to see. The next page has the benefits themselves. And we've been working with Joe Spurgeon, and Joe will be at the next Board of Education meeting to talk specifically about the benefits and to go through all of that. But you'll see that it's projected to increase in this budget by 5.85%, the $856,000. Now, I mentioned the Board of Finance guidance in the meeting that we had with the town bodies and folks. And at that meeting, a model was shared with us about the requests, really guidance, was shared with the Board of Ed. And so we did work very hard to bring in the budget at, as well, frankly, as reasonable as we could, funding our priorities as we have to, but really looking at all of the ways that we can try to save some money, as we always do. The guidance from the Board of Finance this year was for an overall 2.8%. They were looking at 2.38% for the operating budget, which you know just came in at the 1.9 in that other page. 5% for benefits. They came in a little bit higher than that at 5.85. So they came in, that math is wrong, I apologize, about $111 or so $1,000 different. But the bottom line is correct, which is simply the Board of Finance's guidance was they were looking for a 2.8 when you combine the non-benefit account and the benefit account together. This budget that you have totals out at 2.55, so we're 0.25% below the Board of Finance guidance. And we're delivering a budget that sustains the good work that we're doing, that allows us to move forward in some really important and strategic ways, and still maintains the facilities and the operational work that we need. Okay? So there are different ways to look at budgets. One is to look at the individual cost centers that we have. I show this slide really just for one or two quick reasons, then we'll move into the objects instead, because I believe the conversation at the object level is more relevant and important and a better way to understand the budget. But what's important to see here is the parity with our elementary schools. East, South, and West each are about 5% of the overall budget. So it's really a careful approach to balancing across the three elementary schools. And I want to credit all three principals. They spend hours together sort of developing the budgets. And then even when we meet with them to go through and develop and to hear the requests, they do it all together. So there's a lot of alignment here, a very careful approach taken. And Dr. Crenti is key in that as well. We look at our high school and our middle school, and we've got about approximately the same number of students at each location and approximately the same amount in the budget, about 13% at each of those places, at each of those locations for the budget overall. Down below, you see the special education costs and then the pupil personnel, and you can sort of follow it along. When you look up at that blue at the top, the district-wide, those are the benefit accounts. So I think that the Board of Finance is wise to talk about sort of here's the budget without the benefits, and then looking at the benefits a little bit separately, because as you see, it's the largest chunk of the budget, and it has the ability to sort of crowd out other things if we let it. So I welcome that conversation a little bit separate as we'll be having it this year. But again, I do believe that it's a better conversation to talk about the objects. Again, the overall budget is $92,049,007. The majority of that is salary. So 82% of the budget is salary and benefits. It should be. Right? This is a people business. This is what we do. It takes people to get our kids here in the morning, to cook them lunch, to clean up after them sometimes, to secretaries to answer the phones, administrators to organize and run the buildings. It takes our teachers in the classrooms, our paraprofessionals to help out in various ways. It takes our school counselors, our OT, PT, our campus monitors. I mean, the list goes on and on. There are lots of folks that it takes to run a school district and to do it well. And we have 4,200 students, and we have about 740 some odd employees here serving and working on behalf of those students every day. So it does make sense that our salary and benefits numbers are the biggest numbers as we look at our budget itself. So year over year, our salary budget, is looking at a $1.6 million increase, which is 2.76% above the projection. It's about 2.3% over the budget. But in our work that we've been doing as we've gone through, we've, again, had to change some of the projections just a little bit. Driving that number is the contractual increases based upon the agreements with the unions. We've been in conversation with the town council about the recently negotiated teacher's contract, which is the largest driver that we have. The teacher's contract, I think, is a very fair and reasonable contract and is an excellent result for the district and for the teachers. It's step movement and a percentage at the top. But this is for all of them. So this is not just certified staff, non-certified, all of the employees. We also have grid progression for teachers that are advancing on the salary schedule, meaning that if the extra degrees are earned, certifications, then they change a lane, as we talk about. Staffing-wise, and I know the board heard a lot of this at the budget workshop that we did. Staffing-wise, we're looking to remain at our current levels in our elementary school and at Saks. But we are, well, I'll get to the reductions in a second. And then we're looking at a 0.7 FTE increase at the high school. That's for world languages and for science. What we're finding is that, I know we talked about world languages a little bit last year. We've got some classes in world languages that are well over guidelines, and it's a language. You need to speak it and hear it and write it and all of those. So class size is very important there, of course. It's also very important in science, where you have your labs and hands-on activities. And so those class size guidelines are very important to adhere to as well. So we just look to bring down a couple of the larger classes and be sure that we can offer all of our program to our students. The reductions in this area, we're building in $150,000 as turnover savings. It's relatively aggressive, but given the history that we've looked at carefully, we believe it's an appropriate number to build into the budget. We're also decreasing a 3.0 FTE teaching assistants in the district. And this will be a mix at different levels, and everything from a supervisory aide to a classroom TA, depending upon the level and what have you. In our negotiations with teachers, we did eliminate a team coordinator stipend, which is 0.2 of a teacher's position. Again, every little bit matters, and we were able to do that in our negotiations. Last couple of years, we've had a number in the salary budget. We've called it enrollment variability adjustment, and that's been a +1 or a +1.2 at other times, because we sort of anticipated that we'd need to go up a teacher. We just didn't know where it was going to land. This year, it's the opposite. We believe we'll be able to go down a teacher somewhere at the elementary, but we really don't know where it's going to be yet, because of the way that the students are going to be distributed across the schools. So we've got a number of the grade levels, and when you go into the book itself, you'll see this at each of the schools. A number of the grade levels are sort of right on the bubble for needing another section. So we can't necessarily say, well, this will be the grade that we don't add the section, because we don't know where they're going to be. But chances are slim that every single one of those grade levels are going to come in sort of above that bubble where they're going to need the additional section. So we believe that we can anticipate a reduction of 1 FTE at the elementary, but we just can't go further to say exactly where that's going to come from yet. And then what we've done is reduce the substitute account a little bit, which funds the interns on the other side. Interns are not in a salary line, but the substitutes are, so we take it from one into the other. Okay? So ultimately, if you dig into the salary account itself, the majority of that money does go to our general ed classroom teachers. Other goes to our special education teachers, our teaching assistants, our administrators, and then you see it goes through. Again, I mentioned how many kind of different types of employees it takes to run a school district. Most of them are represented there, all the way to our campus monitors, our nurses, managers, and others. But I'm proud of the fact that the majority of the resources that we have go to the folks who are working hands-on with our kids every single day. Our enrollment, our October enrollment this year versus the projected for next year. As we look at it, there's a slight downward trend overall, a little over 1%. Again, we're about 4,200 students, and they're looking at 49 going down. Again, you're always cautious about the kindergarten enrollment. You never know exactly where that's going to come in. But what we see is, the class size is shifting as we go into the middle school and what have you. Let's see. Actually have this. So Saks, with our staffing again, Saks will look to remain the same with its certified staffing, but we'll look to move the teachers a bit to meet the needs of the grades as they're coming in. You see that jump at 27 students in 5th grade, and then the drop of 51 students in 6th grade. So we would look to shift around those resources that we have, which is a slight change from what we talked about last year. If you recall, last year we reduced the Saks 5th grade by 2 sections, and we were anticipating having to restore those 2 sections this year and be up a +2. But given where we are and given the number in 6th, and working with Dave and the administrative team over there, we're going to look to move down from the 6th grade, move those 2 teachers instead. Frankly, it's not ideal, because we do believe in the team structure. But Dave and his team over there are working to develop what it's going to look like and how to make it work to make sure it doesn't disadvantage anyone. And we've done it in the past, and it's one of those decisions that we've made given the constraints on the Board of Ed and the town's budget this year. Yep. Quick snapshot just of our historic enrollment as we go through. Projections, they'll go out 10 years in a projection, but then next year the projection 10 years out can be plus or minus several hundred students. So I always want to be cautious about where we go with projections, but a year, 2, and 3 years out, they tend to be relatively accurate. So it's worth sort of putting up there. You'll see that as we think about 2018 and 2019, we're looking at going down those, a few students. And so we're going to keep an eye on it. And if that does indeed occur, we'll continue to readjust our staffing as need be. They use what's called a cohort survival method, as you know, which really it looks at the students of the last 3 and 5 years, and it develops the projections based on those actual numbers as they've come in. Excuse me. Several people have asked if they account for building projects that are in the pipeline or other things that may be going on in town. And while they do look at housing starts a little bit and they do look at sort of real estate activity, they do not factor in large-scale projects. And I know there's 1 or 2 on the table right now that could result in students coming into the system. They're aware of it, but it really doesn't factor into their modeling as they look at all of this. So this is based on our students and our experience. It's a quick analysis of that. As we look at our enrollment, what happens at the elementary, of course, impacts SACS, impacts the high school. So what we see is as the elementary goes down a bit, you don't instantly see those results in the middle school, and certainly not in the high school. It takes time for those students to work through the system. So this year's kindergarten class was smaller than we had anticipated. If that class stays at that size as it moves through, we would look to move resources around, shift staffing, and do other things based on that, depending on what the size of the grades that come after it. Right? And so we look to make decisions and to manage around that. But it takes some time for those, so the kindergartners, it'll be years before they're at the middle school and even more years before they're at the high school. So I know people can sometimes take a straight look at enrollment and say, okay, you're down this many students, you should be down this many teachers or this many staff members. And it really doesn't work that way. We have to look at the elementary, we look school by school, and then grade by grade. At the middle school, we look grade by grade, and the high school, of course, class by class, and department by department. So it depends upon the distribution of those kids, but we do look at it very, very carefully, as you know. And I just thought it'd be interesting, just very quickly, to take a look at what the enrollment trends have been in the DIRG. Excuse me. So it's a 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, and it's not the specific enrollment number. This ADM is average daily membership. These are, the only way for me to capture this information is go to the state website, and they use ADM instead of the October 1 posting. And what they do is just look at enrollment over the course of the year and average it out, and come up with an average daily membership. So as you see, from last year, actually 16, 17 to 17, 18, which are the most recent numbers, we had a little over 1% decline here. We're not alone. The only district that seems to be trending upward over time is Greenwich. But if we go back to 15, 16 and then to 17, 18, it's much less of a difference as we look at our trending here. Again, Greenwich is up to over 2% from 2 years ago as we look at it. For us, we're just at 0.2 decrease there. But again, we look at these trends. I talk with my colleagues about it. Enrollment's hard to predict. Once they're in the system, it's a lot easier, but that kindergarten number is a big driver in it. But I just thought that you'd be interested in seeing the trends on a macro level. And again, we spend the time with the enrollment because that is the determinant of the staff that's required to run the operation and do the work that we do. The next item, and I'll do benefits last, so the next is contracted services. There's a slight bump up in this as we look, an overall decrease of $94,000, $95,000. So some of the increases, we are looking now at a full year of on our document reproduction services, and I'll explain that a little bit more when I get into the savings of it. But as I mentioned in the beginning that we've in-housed some important operational programs. Document reproduction is one of them. By insourcing this, I'll give you the punchline now, we save $150,000 a year. So we've insourced it, we've increased our productivity, we've improved the process itself. Our tech team, Ian and Brandon are here, Matt's here, others that have been involved with this have done amazing work around this, but now it's our employees instead of outsourced employees in the copy center. We now have something called Print Anywhere, I believe it is, where I can hit print on my laptop here, go back to the office, type in a code, and get that document there. So it's cloud-based printing, which saves numbers of copies, it saves waste, gets rid of waste, eliminates a lot of waste. But our print center is really the story because we've been shifting majority of our work into the print center, which has resulted in significant savings monetarily and resources for paper and what have you. So it's really great work. Joanne and her staff and the technology staff and others have been very involved with all of this. So we have a little bit of an addition here because we wound up purchasing the equipment and they were on warranty for 3 months, so we're just buying those 3 months worth of warranty. But the savings is wonderful, and that's an annual savings as we go through. So great work. Some of the reductions here where this comes from is, again, insourcing some skills. We reduced the need for some outsourced services by building internal capacity, by sending our folks to training, by helping them to learn so that we can meet the needs of our students here within the district. And we always adjust our legal matters account based on upcoming events. So we just completed our negotiations with the teachers and we're able to bring that account down going into next year. So this is how finally we manage all of these things. Our property services object is also going down, $440,000. Which represents an 8.5% decrease. In this account, some new additions in this account are phase 1 of the learning management system. We had some training this morning that went quite well for a number of our staff around the pilot that we've discussed. We're upgrading the energy management system at 4 of our 5 schools. The increase we anticipate in our electricity bill and some network appliance and some other things. But really, again, the story is the reductions. We're able to save some money by insourcing the boiler maintenance that we have, where we've had service contracts on these boilers in the past. We now have the expertise in-house through our own staff to manage this, maintain it, and take care of it. So that's a big help. Again, the print services, by insourcing that. I know this is a favorite of the board, so we saved a few dollars by reducing the amount of paper towels we have to buy because we installed some hand dryers. Those are a 2-year payback. So we saved some there. And of course, significant savings from the natural gas conversion. Right now, 3 of the 5 schools have been switched over. We're working towards and looking forward to East making the shift. And we're going to be talking about West, and we're optimistic, cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to get it over to West as well. There's savings in there, could be up to 40% savings in that line. So as you know, what we did this year was we fully funded it based on the oil price, and then we used that money to pay for the retrofit in the buildings. And I think we did come a little bit short and had to find some other money to make it all work, but we're figuring it out. So next year we're able to realize the savings there, and that's part of how this budget item itself is moving down. So it's a great story, and it's a great partnership. We're grateful for the leadership of the town in order to make this happen for us. Because not only does it save us money by burning natural gas instead of oil, and not only does it mean we don't have to house it on site, we don't like having the oil tanks around, we'd much rather do it on demand. It also means the boilers run more cleanly, more efficiently, and we expect to get a longer lifespan out of them. So it's a win all around. In our purchase services, this is where we have things like our out-of-district tuition, our transportation, some insurance items. These are big items, as you know, but a minimal increase. And that's in part, we have our contractual increase with DATCO. It's going up. Our LAP is going up a little bit, but we have grossed up the tuition out-of-district, as you know. This year, we are anticipating that we may need to access the excess cost grant somewhat to balance out what those costs are. For this year, we look at it very carefully and really do budget for what we anticipate and what we know. We do have a few students who are aging out next year. And since, again, we're comparing against the projected, so based upon the projected, we anticipate that it will be coming down a little bit into next year. So we anticipate spending a little bit less next year than we're spending this year by students who are aging out. And then there's a reduction in our bus fuel. Proud to say that next year we'll be flipping the final third of our buses over to propane. So our entire fleet will be running on propane. which again is a cleaner fuel, starts every time in the cold, is more environmentally friendly, and quiet, as we're driving. So it's a good move. The special education expenditures, just you've seen this slide before. Unfortunately, the newest information is not available. The 17-18 isn't out yet. We're going to keep looking for it, and we'll update the slide if we can find it. We do have the 17-18 prevalence rates. I know that's been a conversation for the board a bit. You'll see that our prevalence rate puts us squarely in the middle of the DIRG. The spending does about the same. It's a tough comparison because people do code things a little bit differently in their budgets, as they develop. For instance, if they have an administrator at the elementary schools whose sole or primary responsibility is special education, that salary may not be in the special education salary. It may actually be in the administrator's salary, so it may not be included in this expenditure. That's not the case for us, but it does make the comparisons a little tricky. Darlene, did I characterize that correctly? Yes. Okay. But we believe at least it shows that we are in the middle of the DIRG at this point around these expenditures and around our prevalence rate. And it's something that we'll continue to discuss and consider with the board. Our supply account, and now you're starting to see these are thin slivers of the overall budget. Our supply account's down $58,000. We're able to do that because we did make a one-time purchase this year for instructional supplies with 6-year subscriptions, so that we'll cycle back around in 6 years, but it was a good deal to make. We're just adjusting the requests for textbooks and non-consumable supplies and things based on current need. And this is where, we talk about the budget being it's both top-down, bottom-up. We go to our classroom teachers, we go to our curriculum specialists, we go to the folks at the ground level doing the work, ask them what you need. We look at our enrollments, our trends, the class enrollments, all those things, and then we make decisions around how many textbooks do we need to purchase in this area, how much do we need to do there, and that's what comes forward. We don't just say, okay, this year I got $100, next year I need $105. Excuse me. So that's, it's always built on actuals. We're always looking to see what the true needs are. So this is going down about 4.25%. Equipment is also going down, another $56,000. This year, we did increase it slightly for the one-time purchase of equipment for the alternative program. And then again, that document reproduction center I was talking about, where instead of leasing the equipment through a third party and paying them that way, we purchased it. And so by doing so, we're able to save that $150,000 a year. We keep the warranty, and we still have level 2 support and everything else available that we've always had. But we also have our employees working in the copy center, and we're able to save that $150,000 a year. Yeah. Other objects, it's $2,800. And this is about increases in membership dues and fees and what have you. So the non-benefits account, again, the 1.9% overall increase. The main driver is salaries, but you'll see that we've worked very, very hard to bring down accounts wherever we can in order to get to a number that we wanted to share with you. Now, the benefits themselves, as of latest information and feedback from Joe, we're looking at about an $855,000 increase year over year. That's the 5.85%. It is a little bit higher than the Board of Finance's guidance. As you know, we have a September 1 plan year, so we don't have many months of experience in this plan year. So what happens is they apply trend. Joe's talked to you about all of this. Sort of the further the further out you are with your budget, then the higher that number tends to be because of the trend compounding as they're applying it in each of the months out. Joe will come, as I said, 2 weeks from now to talk to the board about his insurance projections and what he's thinking, what he's seeing with the trends. But for us right now, this is an accurate number based on the experience and based on Joe's best recommendations. Okay, we are bringing down the budget account itself, the benefit account itself a little bit, with our expectation of some decrease in our unemployment compensation. Okay. And let's see, that's the slide you saw before. And so again, just to reiterate, the guidance itself was a 2.8%, and we're coming in below that, quarter below that at the 2.55%, based on some really, really good work with the people around me. So how did we do it? I want to take a quick look at some of the non-personnel accounts. So this is not salary or benefits. This is sort of everything else. And so we look at sort of 81 different accounts. And you'll find that out of those 81 accounts, 45 of them are no change year over year, 20 of them are decreasing, and then 15 of them are increasing. And the accounts that are increasing are things that are generally contractually required to. So electricity, transportation, LAP, gasoline prices, things like that. There are a couple of little things like in the library supplies. We're looking to fund the supplies for the makerspace down there. It's a few $1,000s, And what we did actually was repurpose money that was in the library books into the makerspaces. And then the software licensing around the LMS and looking at phase 1 of that. Some of the reductions come from, again, the legal matters, the bus fuel, the textbooks we talked about, the library books. But we look at each and every one of these lines. And what happens is, I talk about 81, but actually these 81 exist across all 5 buildings for the most part, right? So there are many, many more than that, and they feed up into these lines, which then get represented to you at the district level. But overall, so we've really looked very carefully, and 3/4 of the accounts are staying the same or going down that are outside of our personnel. So some of the big drivers in the budget, as we mentioned, the contractual wages for staff, the grid progression, the salary adjustments for our folks that are not in unions or in negotiations, FICA Medicare, the transportation account. We're also increasing our special education transportation account and the athletic transportation account somewhat, just because the availability of the buses has been a little tricky. So we've had to outsource some of that transportation. And yeah, all of us know that when buses don't arrive to take kids to a game or take them somewhere they have to go, it's a problem. So we have to be able to problem solve around that. But if we just look at those drivers, that's a $2.9 million increase. That's more than our overall budget request. So again, we found the money elsewhere in order to bring this in. We also do have some new initiatives. I don't want you to think that this is a Spartan budget with nothing for our kids. As we're always thinking forward, we're finding ways to continually improve. That's the core of our work as well. It's the high school staffing, the phase 1 of the LMS. The new network appliance and access points will give us more accessibility for the work we're doing, the makerspace, the instructional supplies, and again, continuing to invest in our next generation science standards. So we are continuing to move forward with the budget that is in front of you as well. So where did the money come from? Some of the efficiencies that we found, again, it's those, you see them right there, and it's things, the insourcing has been very helpful. As I said, the $150,000 for the print services, the insourcing, the boiler maintenance is another $25,000. Like, these numbers really add up. And it's a strategic outcome of a thoughtful decision that was made, a year and a half ago, when we looked at sort of our maintenance crew. And we had many generalists on staff, and they were excellent. But as they have sort of retired, moved on, instead of hiring another generalist in, we've brought in specialists. So we've brought in an electrician, an HVAC specialist, a plumber. Now that we have the expertise on staff and they've learned about our system, they can do a lot of this maintenance. And so it's a long-term decision-making around efficient and effective ways to do this work. You also have somebody on site who's there immediately if there's a problem, and somebody who stays on site, so there's sort of an ownership and a pride in the work as well. I believe it's a very good move. So in summary, overall, the budget itself is $92,049,007. It's $2.285 million increase year over year, which is a 2.55%. You'll see 3 items could drive this whole thing. Salaries at $1.6 million, benefits at $856,000, and then the excess cost grant, which we're accessing this year, but we won't be accessing next year. We hope, at least, again, we've grossed that up, is another $291,000. So we add those up. Again, just those 3 areas, we're over our budget increase. So every other account balances out to that negative $471 in order to bring to you, a budget that, again, we feel meets the strategic needs of the district, enables us to sustain the excellence that we've had through the years, gives us some funding for the strategic priorities that we have, but also is responsive to the conversations and much of what we've heard in the community. You know, we hear and respect the concern that folks have around stresses locally and statewide around, you know, taxation and the tax base and the grand list and the revaluation and those other things. So we worked very hard to be as responsive as we could to all stakeholders in bringing this to you tonight. I can catch my breath if you have any questions about the operating before we dive quickly into the capital, or I'll catch my breath and glad to take any questions, or we can go on.
Any questions? Deanna?
Yeah, I have a couple. The first is going to the SACs, teacher staffing, and, sort of the movement from 6th down to 5th, or potentially moving some staffing from 6th to 5th. And I just wanted to understand, does that look towards doubling up some of the teachers in there? I know in past years we've had teachers at SACs who've had to do math and science, or they've doubled up on, and so I just want to understand what the thought process is on that, and, so as a board we can kind of think about if that's what we're.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the thinking now is to, because of the shift in enrollment of about 60 students, the difference between 5th and 6th next year. Mm-hmm. So to shift 2 staff members down into 5th, where they, as you know, 5th grade, they have teams of 2, so they would do it that way. I know they're looking at some options. So in the past, we've had teachers teaching 2 different disciplines, right, on the team in order to keep those teams together. They're also looking at the possibility of doing something a little bit differently with social studies, I believe. Was it social studies? Where you would have people stay in an area of specialization and maybe teach cross-team in that one discipline. So I don't know exactly what the answer is going to be yet, but I know that we have what has worked in the past, and we could go to that. But they're also looking to see, is there another way to explore this where people wouldn't be teaching across the 2 different disciplines as they do it. But I don't think you guys have quite yet resolved that question. But it would be one of those 2 things. So either 2 people would be teaching 2 different courses, right? Mm-hmm. So like you said, maybe an English and a social studies, or maybe an individual or 2 teaching cross teams and doing all social studies across team.
Okay. And then just 2 other questions. I wanted to make sure I understood on the SPED transportation. So we see an increase in the SPED transportation for next year in the budget, but did I hear that correctly, that we're seeing a decrease in overall SPED? We're anticipating a decrease in SPED spending? So I'm just confused why we would see that.
So what happens is, occasionally a student comes into the district where we can't provide the out-of-district transportation. We had such a student in the district 2 years ago. This year we don't. Okay. But next year I think we're anticipating that we may. Am I representing that correctly? Yeah. So that's the difference. So this year we realized the savings because we didn't have someone with that need. Okay. But we are anticipating that next year we'll have that need.
And then just the final question, because I think it's awesome that we're getting these large savings in the printing by insourcing. I just want to make sure that that the teachers are able to provide all the worksheets and the printing that they need for. So I just want to understand how we're getting that large. That's a very large savings, and so I just want to make sure that that we're feeling in our buildings that we're getting the appropriate resources for the teachers and the staff.
Sure. So we just started it this year. So I would say in the beginning of the year it was a little rocky from time to time. I think that generally we've worked out the kinks, and I do think that things are running relatively smoothly. There certainly will be a speed bump here and there, and that'll happen. But I think on balance that people have been pleased with the new system and the copy center and using the copy center. So one of the big pieces of the savings, in truth, a large percentage of the saving is due to people channeling their jobs now to the copy center instead of running the copies either in their classroom or in the copier in their building or what have you. So now the copy job can electronically go to the copy center and then it appears the next day in the teacher's mailbox. So that, I think, has been helpful, not just in sort of getting the copies and things organized and together, but also freeing up the teacher's time. So they can do it online, do it electronically, send it off to the copy center, then get on to something else instead of spending 15 minutes, 20 minutes, however long, standing at a copy machine, trying to collate, staple, what have you. It's not perfect, but I'd say, I would venture to say it's at least as good as what we had. And the savings really comes in part from, we had a long-term contract with one vendor that had just been rolled from year to year to year for a long period of time. The equipment was old, it was expensive to copy on, we were getting charged lots of things in lots of ways. And so now by insourcing all of this, we're not beholden to some of those costs. For instance, the folks who used to staff the copy center had been staffing the copy center for quite some time and working for this company for quite some time and had some pretty sizable salaries. So in order to, as we shift that to in-house, we're able to control those numbers a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Sherry?
Well, first, I just want to say I think this is a really great, well laid out budget communication, so thank you for that. And I think obviously it has to be commended that you really highlighted the work that's gone into highlighting the cost savings and efficiencies to come in under the Board of Finance guidance, so that's quite an accomplishment. My question related to the turnover savings assumption, and if you could just give us a sense of what the actual turnover savings have been for the past several years. And then also, somewhat related, the reduction of the 3 TAs, just kind of the analysis that went into that of, what are those 3 TAs, how will that affect class support, and how did you arrive upon that being the right number versus 1 TA or 5 TAs? Or,
Sure. So I'll answer the TA question first, then I may look to Joanna Tracy around the turnover a little bit. But for the TAs, the first thing we did was we looked across our 3 elementary schools, and we looked at our instructional support based on the number of students at each of those schools. We identified that there wasn't quite the parity across the 3, so one can be reduced and still be very, very close to the other 2 as far as the balance of the instructional support to students, that ratio in the 3 elementary schools. I'm not going to get more specific than that because, again, these are people in their jobs, and there's always some turnover in teaching assistants, so we would look for the turnover to probably cover the reduction and then shift people around if they were interested. So there was an analysis looking at the ratio of instructional assistants to overall student population, and then a modification made there. At the middle school, similarly, it's really looking at the special education population there and the needs and the support that's been given. And a belief is that we could reduce a special education position there based on the student needs and where we are and how we're using the staff and how that's all working. And then we also look at the 4th grade moving into 5th, the 8th grade moving into 9th, and make those decisions. At the high school, we looked at our supervisory aides and those that we have, and that number's been consistent. It's been the same as it was even before we instituted the campus monitor system. So in conversation with the high school administration and others, we made the determination that with the 3 campus monitors, we could reduce one of our supervisory aides, given that their role and their responsibilities and what they're doing, and that the number we had was sufficient prior to those 3. So we're doing that as sort of a balance against that. So there was an analysis. We did really think hard about it. And if we looked at the 3 elementary schools and found the numbers were the same, then we wouldn't be able to reduce there. But given that difference, we were able to do that. Now the turnover savings. Turnover savings is very tricky because you have retirements. You also have folks who leave that you don't necessarily anticipate that they're going to go. We've had everything from 2 retirements to 12 retirements in the past, and so it is a tough number. We've done an analysis a few years ago, and I probably should update a little bit, but a couple of years ago, it averaged out to be about $35,000 savings when somebody retires from the district. Excuse me. But again, I want to update that number a little bit. But depends upon what that person is teaching when he or she retires as well. So for instance I was an English teacher, and there are lots of us. So if an English teacher retires, you'll have 200 plus applicants, and you can find, you don't necessarily you have a large pool to draw from. If you have a physics teacher or a chemistry teacher or a STEM teacher or somebody, and you don't have as deep of a pool, then you're really in a competitive environment as you're hiring that person, and so your savings might be significantly less. So we have turnover savings. We also have savings, again, when folks leave the district, sometimes, if we, again, depending upon who we hire and who we bring in. But it has ranged from 2 to 12 or 14 or so as far as the retirees go. Not too many years ago, we were looking at 40 new staff members in a year. And some of you have been with me here in this room on New Teacher Orientation Day, and the room's been filled. Well, this year we didn't have that experience, right? We only had a couple of tables, and it wasn't nearly the same number of new folks. I think it was 21 overall, and that was retirees and folks coming and going. So, that 150 number, we always have conversations with the Board of Finance about this, and since that's about a month out, we're usually a little further down the road, and we might hear and actually have some retirements in hand. As of now, we don't have any retirements in hand. We've heard that one person that we know of may be retiring. And again, it's classroom teachers where the savings comes from, none of the other bargaining units. Because they don't have the step system in the other bargaining units. It's really just teachers who retire where that savings is. So is that enough to answer your question at this point? Would you like a detailed analysis that I can do
So
for you?
at this point, that's an estimate, and as you progress through the budget process, you may be able to get more specific on whether or not that's actionable. I mean,
Yeah.
will you be revisiting this assumption through the budget process?
Absolutely. It's something that Board of Finance always wants to talk about. There have been times the Board of Finance has talked about $500,000 or more in the turnover savings. That's problematic for us, given the history. So we'll certainly be watching it and having that conversation. Absolutely.
Other questions? Jen?
So thank you for this. It's a great job. I'm so excited that we're able to come to the town below the guidance that we receive from Board of Finance. I think that's super important, and it looks streamlined, and so it looks really good. Couple quick questions. As far as what schools right now are on natural gas?
So right now it's South, the high school, and Saks.
And West School is potential?
East is in the works.
East is in the works.
West is in discussion.
Got it. Okay. And so is that number for West in here as well, or just
No, what you'll see in the
in the detail?
capital, you'll see that the West oil tank is moved out 1 year because we're going to look for a 1-year deferral on the need to remove that
Right.
to give time for that line to come in.
Okay.
But I don't want to say never, but we're waiting for it over at East.
Got it, okay. And then as far as under the salaries, the substitute account reduced to fund interns, can you just explain that a little bit? Because I know a lot of training goes into having these subs with, the emergency protocol and all that. So we're going to be
Sure,
trying to use
so-
our interns more.
Yeah, the shift is what we try to do, although they're not always available. So we fund this in the hope that we can find good people, and if we can't, then we have to move the money back over into subs, and we've done it for a couple of years. But University of Bridgeport, Sacred Heart, Fairfield, they have folks who are enrolled in their master's program who serve during the day as interns and then take their classes in the evening, and we wind up paying their tuition directly. So they're going for their master's in education, and they're working for us during the day, and then we pay the university, and we wind up saving significantly over what it would cost to have that person in the building every day. By doing that, then they are assigned to a building every day, so it's somebody who gets to know the kids, know the teachers, know the community, and know the protocols, as you're saying. So I think it's a much better approach. It also puts us in a spot where, our folks who are working with our kids and substituting for us want to be teachers. Right. So I feel a little bit like a learning hospital. Like they're with their teachers, they're learning from them, and when they don't have classes to cover for whatever reason, they can observe, they can help out. So it's a much richer experience for them and for us than a day-to-day substitute.
Right.
So I
Yeah,
prefer
that's
it when
great.
we can do it, but we have to get the right people. We have found some really good teachers through programs like that. So people who've been excellent through their internship, and then we had an opening, we've been able to hire them on board. And that's
Yep.
been important
I
too.
think that's great. And then my last quick question about athletic transportation, just because I was at the high school today and I know one of our games had to be canceled because of some bus issues. So is that 16,000, is that What is that number?
So
Is
what
that-
happens at times if we don't have a bus, then we'll reach out to a charter company in order to run the bus for that.
What is
run.
that number?
So that's the 16. It's additional to what's already in there for athletic transportation.
Got it.
Which enables us to be able to do that. We do it now, but it comes at a cost in other places that we have to reduce other funding and what have you. But that will empower Jay to be able to solve some more of those problems if they keep cropping up.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Katrina?
Just going back to the school start times, I'm just curious, in your budget, are you comfortable that you have what you need for talking about June, and then assuming we begin some kind of work if we were to move forward with a plan?
Yeah, once I caught my breath, I thought I meant to mention that and I didn't, so thank you for asking the question. In my budget, I do have funding for a scheduling consultant to be able to come, and it's just in the superintendent's line essentially, but it's money for a scheduling consultant to come in because, again, we're looking at if that scenario or any scenario happens, we're going to really need to take a close look at our master schedules, how we're moving kids, what they're doing, the times, at all of our levels. So the scheduling consultant money is there. We also have some other resources that are here for transportation consultant and that kind of work because, again, Roy does an amazing job. But if we're talking about running the school system while we're rerouting kids and running other scenarios, we need to be able to support that work. So yes, we've worked carefully to make sure that the funding is there and appropriate. The budget itself at the $92 million, we're able to do things like that because it's smaller in that bigger picture. So it doesn't result in a significant percentage increase. But we do have to put it in there in order to make sure that we can do it, and it happens, so, yeah.
Other questions? I just have one. It's a great presentation, by the way. Thank you. Very straightforward. And that is the learning management system. Can you just walk us through what phase one is again? Just so we understand what's encompassed in the, I think, $20,000 or thereabouts.
Sure. I'll be quick, and if you want more, we've got an expert sitting right here. So I sat in on some training this morning, and it was probably about 20 teachers in the room, I would say, and there were 2 different rounds of training today. I sat in for a little while to learn about the program itself, the system itself. And what we're looking at is something called Schoology. What it does is allows teachers to build their courses online. But really the trainer, one of the things I was most impressed with was talking about how this becomes the clearinghouse for everything that kids and parents and others want to know. He was talking about how often, say, students at the high school might go to use Facebook or other things to communicate with each other about games or sports or calendars or whatever. All of that can be incorporated into this program. So as we're learning about it, now we've got a team of folks who are going to go try it out and pilot it at the various levels. We've got some elementary, some middle, and some high, and they're working together at each of those levels to talk about it. Then as a result of the pilot, we'll make some decisions around where should we sort of begin to roll this out as a phase one if the pilot goes well. If the pilot doesn't go well, then we've got to go back to the drawing board and take another look and do some other things. But if the pilot goes well, and a lot of work has gone into it to get it to this point, we'll look to see, is it whether it makes most sense at the high school, the middle school, the elementary. Right now, I don't know if it's fair to say we're leaning one way or the other. I'd say we've got significant expertise at the high school. A couple of teachers who have used Moodle for some time were in the training today and talking about the advanced functionality of this over that and what it would take to do the migration over. So, certainly there's some expertise at the high school that could be helpful in this. But we're going to wait to see what we learn from the pilot to make the decision. Ultimately, phase one is a limited rollout of either a department or a grade level somewhere in order to start to build the internal capacity so that the training then moves forward from our people as we go and do that support.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other questions? Deanna?
It's not really a question, but it's a comment so that people outside can really understand. This learning management system has been sort of in the budget for multiple years and has been shifted away. And I know it is as a former high school parent, it is a huge priority with parents in this community. And so I can't overemphasize how important this particular piece in the budget is for us to move forward with with the rollout. It's a long time coming, and I applaud it being in the budget, and I would love to see, being able to do it faster, but obviously, to do things thoughtfully. I understand we have to take our time, but I would like to make sure everyone that's watching or listening understands how critical this piece of the budget is.
Yeah, I
Agreed.
do. It's a high level area for us. Absolutely. Thank you.
Maria?
So it's being piloted right now, the phase one, is that happening right now this year?
No, the training just started
The
today.
training, so then it would be, what's the timeline then?
Sure. So the folks were thinking that they wanted to train now in order to learn to get up to speed to see if the rollout for semester 2 could happen. So for the high school, middle school. So they would look to begin using it at the start of the second semester, which is the end of the month.
So then, would there be a savings in not using Moodle and not using Digication? Does that come out of the budget?
No, not at this point, because first it's a limited, right now it's a very limited pilot, right? But even going into next year, it's going to be limited as far as what phase 1 looks like in time. I think we would look to move everything out of Moodle, certainly into Schoology, and then we could decrease that amount. But it will take some time. And, I wouldn't want, we'd have to maintain the 2 systems as we're doing it limited. And then once we move all of the things over, then certainly there would be that savings. Digication is something we have to look at. They use that very specifically around the VPA, and they've got some, well, and you're well aware, the music, the images, the space requirements of Digication in order to build those portfolios. I'm not sure what the limitations may be around in this program around that, so I just have to learn more about that to know.
And I'm not sure why it's under property services, phase 1 of the learning management system?
Because it's the software support. So software support is in the property services for whatever reason, so it's there as the software.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Other questions? All right, on to capital.
I missed the 8 o'clock. All right. No, sorry, they haven't kicked off. So capital budgets, there are 3 different dimensions to the capital budget, but as you know, they're facilities, transportation, and the technology piece. So just briefly to touch on 1 or 2 of the highlights for each in the facilities. You see the very first item there is the engineering services for the east roof. We are beginning the south roof this summer is the plan. As we do one roof, we have to do the engineering services to plan for the next roof. Because as you know, we can only do them over the summer time. So we have to plan a year in advance to do that work. So that's the east roof engineering there. 5 years ago, we had a master facilities plan completed. That has really informed our capital requests through these past years. That now is aging out, and so we're looking to update that plan and have another study done for us as well. The 3 elementaries, you're going to see the same couple of items. One very important one is the air conditioning of the gym and the adjacent corridor ventilation. In most of our classrooms, they run on what are the unit ventilators. Those boxes under the windows that run and do the air conditioning and the heating, what have you. Those unit ventilators really aren't great, but those are what people put in the rooms, and that's what we have to work with. But what we found can happen, especially in rainy, hot, muggy temperatures, is the other outside air that's getting into the building, specifically through the corridors and the gym, coming into the classrooms and creating overload on those unit vents where they can't keep up. And if they're not air conditioning the air that's there, they're not tempering it, they're not reducing the humidity that's in there, and so it's becoming a problem. So what we're looking to do at each of the elementary schools is put a system in to air condition the gym and to temper the air in the adjacent corridors so that the whole building can be covered and we can control temperature, humidity, and other things building-wide. So you'll see that at east, west, and south, and we feel that's a very important thing. The other thing is the light pole replacement. We've had a couple of light poles fall down in those schools. So we're doing a study now. Over the next 4 years, maybe 5, we're going to be replacing out the light poles that are in bad shape. You don't know, you can't tell because they rust out from the inside. So we're going to be replacing those over time. And that's a new item as well. The South is the big driver of the capital budget this year. Getting that roof done is going to cost about $2.2 million is what we have it pegged at this point. It was actually on the schedule 3 years ago or so to be done. And we were asked by the Board of Finance if we could defer it for a period of time, so we did. We really don't feel you can defer it anymore. You know, we're spending a lot of time running around after rains, after problems, after storms, and water incursion's an issue. And so we need to keep up with it, or other problems happen, and we want to avoid those. So the roof replacement at South this summer, East next summer, and then West the third summer after that. We're also working with a group to look at solar options at each of the 3 schools, and hoping to be able to do something relatively soon around that as well. So as the South roof is replaced, the folks doing that work are working alongside the folks we're working with around solar to figure out, can they get solar panels on, what would it look like, how might it work, and so we're looking to improve in that way as well. Over at Saks, we have a main waistline that needs to be replaced. Not to go into too many details, but unfortunately it's right in the heart of the building, right in the middle, right by that guidance suite. So we've got to jackhammer it out, dig it up, get in there, and fix that. That's definitely summer work. And then over at the high school, you see the work there, the marine biology casework. As you know, our marine biology program is in a science classroom. Those fish tanks and other things are sitting on the countertops with casework underneath, so we're looking at, we've got to pull that out, because again, you've got a room full of water and moisture and what have you. So we're going to pull the casework out and redesign that and do that a bit differently. Sound booth in the auditorium, Alan's been working on this, which is very exciting, and it's right in front of the light booth on the ground and creating a sound booth there at the high school auditorium here. What you don't see here, but you'll see in the budget book, is something that's new with the planetarium. And a couple of years out, we're looking at really refurbishing and fixing the planetarium. We have our projector there, which is, I think, probably the original projector. It is one of only a few left of that generation. Whenever we have to have any work done on it, we have to fly the person in. It's the same person's been working on it for a long time, and it's time for an upgrade. You know, the possibilities in that space have really exponentially changed based on changes in technology. If you've been to museums recently that have planetariums, you might have seen some of the shows they have now with the video projectors and the way they use the space. So where, you know, the planetarium in the past, the equipment we have, the work we do has worked well. Now we're really looking at this as a real educational space in a variety of different disciplines. You know, it's not just limited to the dots on the screen, but now you can use the technology and the equipment to really, in all disciplines, in all ways. So it's a great space. How can we repurpose it, keep it as the wonderful planetarium that it is, but maybe also use it for some other functions that would really be great for kids and for our program. And maybe not just high school kids. I mean, it could be something available to the whole district. So that's not on here because it's not next year. But it's a couple of years out, but it's something we're going to be talking about, and I'm even looking to maybe even set up a demo in the next couple of months so the board can understand what I'm talking about, why. It's a pretty exciting opportunity, I think, for us. It's a great resource to have. So the total capital budget request is $3.3 million for the facilities, but again, 2.2 of that is driven just by that south roof itself. Additionally, in capital, we have our special education transportation vehicle replacement. This is the 3 vehicles that we've been replacing. What this really does, and we haven't talked about it this way, but as we were thinking about it together, it's really a 7-year replacement cycle. So we've got 21 vehicles, 3 per year. So every 7 years we're cycling out a vehicle, which seems reasonable. These vehicles have an awful lot of miles on them. They're used every day. And what we're looking to do this year is, as we replace the vehicles, to take the best one and repurpose it by retrofitting it for our maintenance program. So instead of purchasing a brand new vehicle for maintenance, using the best van that we have, pulling it out, getting the racks, doing whatever we have to do so that our maintenance folks can use that to travel around the district. And you know, we can do that periodically over time as well. So as we continue to replace these, we're able to repurpose the existing. And those that we don't repurpose, we trade in. as we make the purchase. Okay? And then the final thing is the technology lease. As you know, for years we have been using a lease to finance the purchase of technology. So it's about a $150,000 addition into the budget, gives us about $600,000 of purchasing power. And what that is, that helps us to maintain and support the investment that we've made in technology through the years, whether it's machines that have aged out, whether it's different types of machines, things that we have on the back end with the network and some other things there. We've got things like our smart boards and our projectors and things that we use in the classroom. This is really, it's about maintaining and updating and continuing to have the technology equipment that we need. And then it's also to identify opportunities to expand in strategic ways. So we're kind of aging things out. For instance, years ago we bought netbooks. Remember netbooks, those little small little laptops with very small hard drives, whatever. Those have all aged out now. We'll replace those with Chromebooks or other things. So it's, we look at desktops for some of the folks and other equipment that we may need through that technology lease. It's a $150,000 expense, $600,000 of purchasing power. So overall, the facilities, or the capital request itself, is the 3.3, the 150,000, and then 619 it comes to. So it's about a $4 million ask around the capital request itself.
Any questions? Yes, Deanna.
It's not a question, but it's a comment, and I just wanted to thank you for including the consultant for the facilities. I think the last time we did that was my first year on the board, and it's been really informative to have for the 5-year capital plan. I mean, it really does drive that for us, and so thank you, because I keep asking about it, and I'm so happy to finally see it in here again. It's a really worthwhile expense. So that's it.
Okay.
Oh, and also, I look forward to the planetarium discussion, because I was just in there for the first time last year, and it is an amazing space, but yes, it is very dated. In fact, there's a few chairs missing and corned off, and I feel like it's the old Saks seat issue revisited in the planetarium, but it is a wonderful space, and I remember being there for open house, and the number of kids in that room that were just in awe with Mr. Hay?
Tim
Who's
Hay,
the
yeah.
science teacher?
Yes, Tim.
He did an amazing job in that very limited space, utilizing something that, is just a wonderful asset, and it could be a tremendous community asset in addition. So it's nice to see that finally in the capital budget. So that's it.
Other questions? I just have one on the roof replacement. Can you just give us a little bit of background on, for everybody's benefit, how long that's been on? I think you said 3 years, and then also what sort of issues we're dealing with currently or expect to deal with in the near future, because it's obviously a huge number.
Sure. The roof itself has been on for 20 years, right? And these are 20-year roofs. So it has started to fail in some locations. So, what happens, just to speak to South directly. And we've had an awful lot of rain this year. So we do wind up with water coming through the ceiling and stained tiles and buckets, sort of catching the water as it comes through. We're always good. We check it afterwards, and we keep a good eye on things to make sure that the air quality is what it needs to be and what have you. It's the water incursion is the issue. What we're looking to do is put on 30-year roofs instead of the 20. So it costs a little bit more upfront, but it's much more economical in the long run. So we're looking to put that on. What happens over at South, which is interesting, is there are a variety of different roofs and elevations over there. It's not just like doing a house. It's not one flat roof. There's something like 19 or 21 some odd, 26? 26 different roof systems and elevations over there. So it's a very complex job. We are cautiously optimistic that it's a one summer job. It may extend a little bit one way or the other. We've got to look at all of that. But there's a lot to it. But to allow it to continue without replacing it really is just inviting additional water incursion in the building, which is something that we don't want.
Right. Okay. Thanks. And just one other question or comment, I guess, as we look to do that work, is there anything we might do with the town in terms of contracting with other roof work to just bring down the overall cost. I don't know if that's possible, but
Well, we'll
it's a
certainly be
thought.
talking with them in the months ahead,
Yeah.
about this. We've been working with a consultant who has been sort of helping us to create and generate the RFP and getting that out on the street and doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Because just like we have to do this work in the summertime, every school district has to do it in the summertime.
Right.
So you really have to get your ducks in a row and get out there early, or there's nobody left to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been doing that, working with somebody to get that out and going. But yeah, the town, I believe, is aware of what we're doing, and certainly we'll be talking to them in the months ahead about all of that.
Great. Any other questions? Just one other comment before you wrap up is we're going to have next week, we need to schedule just a workshop session for the board with the administration to just talk about the budget in a little bit more detail, answer questions, et cetera. So that'll be another opportunity to delve into the details.
Great.
All right. Oh, Sherry.
Just one general comment as you close. I thought the data that you presented on how we're number 2 in the adjusted net grand list, but number 27 in the NCEB rank is very illuminating. And I think that this budget really represents a very appropriate budget for the current fiscal environment that meets our needs and sustains the excellence in our schools. And I think you've done a great job of highlighting all of the work that's been ongoing to really drive efficiency and cost savings across the board. So I would want to commend you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you. All right.
Do you want to do a first read?
Sure. So can I have a motion to approve as a first read the superintendent's 2019-2020 budget? Sherry, second. Katrina. Thank you. Next on the list is the All Sports Booster Club donation. Dr. Lutzi?
Sure. I'll be brief. You have in front of you a memo from the New Canaan All Sports Booster Club. And as you know, they are incredibly generous sponsors of our program on behalf of our kids, and very grateful for their generosity and their thoughtful approach to it. So Jay has been working with them for the fitness center and looking at some new equipment in the fitness center. I know that Jay partners often with the All Sports Booster Club, and they identified the need for the 4 preceptor elliptical trainers, the stair mill machine, the 3 recumbent bikes. And as you can see here, these machines aren't just for our student athletes, they're for all of our students. So as we look at our fitness center, which I think is something to be very proud of for our building and our community, that's not just for our student athletes, but it's open to all of our kids throughout the course of the day, certainly in their PE classes and other opportunities. So some of the equipment here is very appropriate for some of our special education students as well. So I commend Jay for working that through and thank the Booster Club for their generous donation, and looking for the board to approve it in the amount of $15,000.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve that donation? Sherry? Jen? All those in favor? Thanks.
Could I just ask a question?
Sure.
What are the hours of the fitness center? Is it before the school day, and how late does it stay open?
I believe we do have some folks who use it in the morning. Yeah. It'll stay open in the afternoon. I don't know exactly the times. I think it's dependent upon the supervision that we're able to have in there. There are teams that go in and do use it in the afternoons. It could be more seasonal. I can find out for you if you like.
But it's the same where the preseason training takes place too for a lot of the teams?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's used very often. And it's a fabulous space for our kids. It really is.
Thanks.
But I'll get you the information.
I'm just
more
curious
directly.
how late it stays open.
Next up is comments from the public. Yes.
Hi, I'm Ann Shimmick. I live at 47 Douglas Road, and I know you are all ready to get out of here. So I really appreciate you listening to my comments tonight, as well as all you've done this year for our community, and especially on the issue of later start times. I did specifically want to address some of the comments regarding elementary students. I have a fifth grader at Saks and then twins who are in second grade. So definitely coming more from this elementary perspective. First of all, I very much support, the proposal of all elementary students being on one tier. I think that could solve a lot of problems that then could also help, with afternoon activities for everyone in our district. My kids are up early. I think many people with elementary students have kids who are up early and, could go to school earlier. I think, the 8:15 start time for South has never been any problem for my kids. And they are also ready to be done and playing by the time I pick them up at 2:45. The other thing that I think is important that I'm starting to note now that I have a fifth grader is I see that she has a lot of trouble falling asleep. She goes to bed at 8:30. Screen time and homework isn't a big issue, but she'll lie in her bed, talking or singing until 9:30 at night. While my second graders, they can crash at any time. It's more dependent on the time I get them to bed than really the time that, their body is telling them when to fall asleep. So I just wanted to add that. And then I wanted to mention too, I'm the South PTC board rep. And I've heard from many elementary parents that they also care deeply about this issue. I think, maybe they feel they can't speak as much or they're talking more to me about it. But I think it's 6 years of their kids' lives. And, even though it's far in the future for them, I think it's something that they are definitely considering, and hearing all of the press and information about the medical research very much resonates with them as well. However, though, I definitely did want to bring up that they have a lot of concerns about starting at 7:30. I would very much urge you all to try and find a few more options where we could at least consider the tier 1 with elementary starting as close to 8 as possible. And then the other thing I just wanted to address, because I feel it comes up often, is the issue of walkers. So my kids do walk to school. As we saw from the transportation presentation, there are 40 kids who don't get a bus to South. I think there are a lot of kids who walk to South because, as we said, they're up early, it's fun to walk, it's great. So anyway, though, there are 40 kids who don't get a bus. Those are all within a half-mile radius. We're actually some of the farthest in that radius, the kids behind us get a bus to school. My kids leave at 8 every morning. So I think, too, I guess I just also urge us not to overthink that we need buses for walkers. You guys could have a bus stop in my front door and my kids could still make it to school on time. So really for the elementary kids, I think the half-mile radius means that walking is a pretty feasible option, as long as we aren't starting school too early for them.
And that's 2 minutes.
Thank you
Sorry.
very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Next up is announcements and future business. Dr. Lutzi.
Sure. So as we mentioned, 2 weeks from tonight, Joe will be joining us to talk more about the insurance and the Internal Services Fund. And we'll be looking for a second reading of the budget there. We do have the school calendar that's still out for 21-22. Haven't heard much feedback, so if anybody has any, they're welcome to share. And there we go.
Great. Maria?
I assume we're doing the same process where if we have questions, you'd rather we send them to you on the budget, if there's any budget?
If you could, it's helpful. And then I'm glad to bring them to the workshop if we get them in advance of that. And if not, we'll bring them to the board meeting to discuss. It gives us an opportunity to thoroughly answer your questions instead of sort of, trying to piece it together here. So if possible, yes, but whatever works is fine.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks.
Great. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Jen? Second? Deanna? All those in favor?
See ya.
Great. Thanks.
Go Tigers.